Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to talk SEC basketball for this upcoming Saturday. Blake, the final weekend of the year. We got a lot riding on stuff here. We've got the SEC championship is at stake. We got NCAA tournament seeding. We got a Texas A&M team that suddenly popped up potentially on the bubble, and who knows, maybe Mississippi State too, Florida obviously. Going to be a very interesting weekend of SEC basketball.
It should be, and this is. I think it's usually the case when you go into but I don't know if we haven't seen sort of a Saturday setup like this before. I think we've had it where you've had unknowns with tiebreakers and those kind of things, but I think specifically when you talk about the title race, this is one of the more interesting ones in recent years for sure. Even though, like we said, technically Auburn has locked up at least a co-champion at this point, we do like to go into the tiebreakers and to crown our, the full-on number one champion, and that'll be the interesting setup. But like you said, there's also storylines with Florida, teams like that need to try to get some wins to get back onto the right side of the bubble. So now is where I begin the fence sitting. Because
we can fence sit like nobody else.
No, well, in this slate right here, if you only watch this video for my fence sitting, which some of you absolutely do not, you're gonna get the best of the best. Right, this is like a highlight video for fence sitting because I have no idea. I'm telling you up front, I think this could be one of those like where I'm gonna say that I legitimately think there is a possibility we go. Well, there's one game I feel pretty good about, but like a 1-6 scenario here is not out of the question. I think this is that interesting of a slate. So
well, and by the way, when we're done, we will take our picks, project them forward, and tell you how the SEC tournament bracket would go if we nail all 7 games, which we want. And if we go 6-1, I'm going to hold a grudge against the teams that screw that up because then the calculus for the bracket is entirely different. But anyway, grab your zero bar, grab a seat, and let's start with.
Are we getting on the Must Bus to start off with here?
We are taking the Must Bus to Knoxville. That we do these in order of tip off.
Oh, of course. Come on, man. No, this game actually tips off at like 9 p.m. Eastern is what I heard.
It should. You save the drama to the end, but the Must Bus is going full blast. 114 miles an hour from Fayetteville to Knoxville, where they run into a pretty hot Vol team. Noon Eastern tip-off. Tennessee about a 6-point favorite on KenPom. We don't have the lines yet. I have a feeling that'll be a point or two lower. But we're starting off with, in my opinion, and I think no stretch, the game of the day in the league and probably up there nationally too.
I hate starting with ones like this because it sends you off course. And as we said,
the Must Bus does not go off course, Blake.
No, well, if it's going 114, it's probably gotten a speeding ticket somewhere along the way. But Must has got the bank account probably to support paying that. But I mean, let's be honest here. We've talked about both these teams a lot over the past. Whatever. There's no doubt that these two teams are playing their best basketball of the season. A potential SEC title of some sort is on the line here. And that would be quite an accomplishment for both teams. Let's be real. I mean, this Tennessee team, we said coming to the season we didn't know what to make of them. We just you thought they were going to be good, right? But it was like, they're going to have Kennedy Chandler, but you also know, they're losing an Epon, someone who's been so important to their defense, and yet here they are still as one of the better defensive teams statistically in the country. All these other guards, Vescovi's had a career season.
Survived an injury to Kumwa.
Yeah, Ziegler's emerged into, one of the more entertaining players, I think, in the league at his position. Josiah Jordan-James has really come on at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Fulkerson, I think, is still someone that the numbers don't have to be flashy, but I think just having John Fulkerson on the floor with his experience, even if it's 20 minutes a game, there's value in that. And so, Tennessee is really, again, this is when you want to be playing your best basketball of the season. And then on the other side, our thoughts on Arkansas well documented at this point. They are, in my opinion, playing as well as anyone in the country right now. And I would put them up against really anyone out there in terms of how they played since, like we said, January 12th, basically. And so for them to possibly be in a position to win a regular season title after starting 0-3 and seeming like all was lost at that point, and that they really didn't have any way back based on this, brutal part of the schedule. And what have they done? Right, they are 1 point away from being undefeated over the past 2 months, basically. So all that setup, it just doesn't get any better. I mean, really, if we think about it, the setup does not get any better than this for these two teams. You go back to the previous game, which was not long ago, 2 weekends ago, that these two played, and it was kind of that slugfest that we see sometimes in the SEC. 58-48, Arkansas wins that one at Bud Walton Arena. Jalen Williams, huge game. We look back at that. That was one of those games we thought, Tennessee, it was going to be a challenge just because it was on the road, and it didn't help that they had guys in foul, and it's just those kind of things, and they couldn't make a shot from outside. And that's one of the things we talked about with Tennessee is they're kind of they're a team that's a little deceiving, I think, from the 3-point line because they don't take a ton of them, but they're pretty efficient when they do make, you know what I mean, like they're an efficient team from that area. And I think that's something that can really help them here in a game like this, because I don't, obviously I don't think they're going to shoot as bad as they did at Bud Walton. I mean, they shot bad overall, period. But that goes back to what we talked about with Arkansas's defense. What was that missing piece for Arkansas when they were having those struggles? They weren't very good defensively, but now they are rock solid on the defensive side, and you can credit that to a lot of different guys. Really, I think that's something maybe we haven't talked about enough is you can credit their defensive turnaround. Sometimes we talk about maybe just one or two guys, but I think you can credit that to those top 5 guys, all 5 of them, right? Because we've talked about Note and Davis, their steal ability. We talked about Tony, his ability, Amude, Jalen Williams. We know what he contributes inside. I mean, it's a total team effort on defense, and that was a big part of that first game for them. But you know where I'm going here, because I have
home teams in the SEC just don't lose at the top level.
65-1 now, I believe, is the updated stat, and you guys know we put it out there about 63-1 coming into the midweek games. Let's see, Arkansas won at home, of course. They beat LSU. Kentucky beat Ole Miss, so that adds 2 more. I think by default we have to go with that, because it's just I've gone with that the entire season, basically, or really over this past month. I mean, that's what we've gone with. But there is still that thing in the back of my mind, and here's where the fence sitting starts, right? I think for Arkansas, if they win this game, I said it in the last video, it would be for them to finish the season beating the teams that they've beaten. I told you, I thought it was already impressive, this run they've been on, one of the most impressive runs we've seen in the SEC.
Nobody is
years.
beating Tennessee in Knoxville right now. That would be just, I mean, of all the wins this year, that might be the one that takes the cake.
Yes, because that's bigger than Vanderbilt beating Arkansas at Arkansas, right? Because that was a completely different scenario. So if you're telling me if that's going to be the 2, or I mean, let's say South Carolina beats Auburn, that's certainly a huge one as well. But that is, I think if they were to win this game and finish the season beating Tennessee, Florida, Kentucky, LSU, and Tennessee again, and by the way, Auburn in there, all in the month of February. Think about all that. In the month of February, that's what they've done.
Amazing.
I truly think you could look back at this and say, and I compared it right to the undefeated season we talked about. I think what Alabama did last year certainly was not undervalued, because they went 16-2 in the SEC and they were the regular season champions. But I think this would be just one of the most impressive runs I've seen by a team, and you can put that up there with probably the top 3 in the last decade or so. I truly think that, because this is as good as the SEC's been in a long, long time. And I think for them to do that, knowing that all we talked about was how brutal this schedule was for them in this back half. We said it's going to be impossible to navigate. If they were to navigate it by going, losing one game by 1 point.
Winning 14 of 15. Yeah.
Right. And beating, let's see, they would have 1, 2, 3. If they beat Tennessee, they would have 4 wins in the past month over top 4 seeds, right? Top 3 seeds, maybe. Is that because it would be Auburn,
Let me
Tennessee,
check.
Kentucky. You know what I mean? Yeah. So
It
Auburn,
all
Tennessee,
runs together
Kentucky,
after a while.
those are
with
all
Arkansas.
potential top 3 seeds. Yeah. So that's exactly what it would be.
Yeah, let's give the full rundown, okay? NCAA tournament teams that Arkansas has beaten in this run, which started with on January the 12th, doubling up on Missouri,
Right.
87-43, and then a point. Okay, NCAA tournament teams they've beaten. LSU, that was on the road. Auburn, that was in Fayetteville. Tennessee in Fayetteville. Kentucky in Fayetteville. LSU in Fayetteville. Also, if you want to go NIT, I think South Carolina's heading to the NIT. A&M is heading to the NIT. Maybe the NCAA. We'll talk about that potentially later. West Virginia, not right now. I think they're 2 under 500. Mississippi State is heading to the NIT. And maybe the NCAA, but I think that ship probably sailed with the loss to Auburn. And Florida's heading either the NCAAs or the NIT. So, like, even the games that aren't, like, splash games, like, wow, you took down Auburn, there were some really, really solid wins in there, too.
Yeah. I think it's just, to me, knowing that they could beat 4 top 3 type seeds, and, that would be 2 if you beat Tennessee because that's, the same team. But it would be remarkable. But like we've talked about, it's going to be a challenge because no one's beaten Tennessee at Tennessee, and we've seen how the Vols have played at home, right? And I think it's just one of those games where that has been the theme of the SEC this year. It's just the top teams have won at home, and we've been pushing it more than anyone over the past 2 weeks now, and it's just, I think this is one of those, like we say, this has really been one of the most exciting SEC basketball seasons.
Oh,
probably
my goodness, yes.
I mean, really, and let's think about that. And I think
Blake, let's think about this. Like that was it last Saturday or 2 Saturdays ago? I guess it was. We had the 2 big games, and you're like, man, we can't beat. I mean, Wednesday night was incredible.
Yeah, well,
and now you got a great finish. I mean, it's like, here's the thing, like this year. Like, I remember that time 6 weeks ago that we made fun of the slate, said it's not worth watching. Like, even as diehards, we're interested because we have to be. What happens? Right. You have a huge upset or two. You have a near miss. Like, every night this league brings it.
Yeah, but there's nothing like this.
No, there's not. But
final Saturday, official SEC title on the line. It's going to be great. The Must Bus is gassed up, got the 0 bars, got the corn nuts on board now. I think it's going to be a challenge, though, because Tennessee is just they've been great at home, man. So
don't get mad at us. I lost my voice last week calling the Hogs. That's the story we're going to go with.
It's fine. I think it.
But
the good thing is,
well, here's the thing. This is the way that I process things like this. When you've got a trend like that, you just go with it unless you have a great reason not to. And then if you miss, you don't feel stupid, right? You're like, well, okay.
Right.
Tennessee never loses at home. They finally lost one. That's one of those things that, like, I think I'm going to let it happen before I predict it.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, we will maybe do justice to if the Arkansas Razorbacks are to pull the upset, this is how it goes. And I don't think. Well, I mean, I don't think the line's going to be 6, which is what Ken Palm's got. But
if you had to take either one of these 2 teams on a neutral floor right now, who would you take? I know my answer.
I think I'd take Arkansas.
I would take Arkansas because I think they've played better than anyone. And I know people will keep pointing out, well, look at how many games they've had at home. I get it, man, but they got to win the games. Like, you're not just walking into the gym and automatically hang them. They got to find a way to win the games. And so this is going to be fantastic. I think this one's just going to be a whole lot of fun. And if you enjoy SEC basketball, even if you're a fan of one of the other teams, if you're a fan of Auburn, I know what you're rooting for. Again, rooting for TV Teddy in this one, maybe, but I don't know if he's on the call for that one. But I can guarantee you it's either going to be Ted Valentine, Doug Shouse, or Pat Adams. One of those 3 are going to be in this game. I have zero doubt about that. But yeah, so we'll see. But I think this is it's going to be a great one. And if you're an Arkansas fan and you think we're sliding you in any way, I would highly suggest you to go back through our catalog of videos over the past 2 weeks, and there's a reason why we gassed up the Must Bus a couple weeks ago, and that sucker still hadn't run out of gas. So yeah, this is I don't know what else to say. I mean, we do these predictions for fun, but to me, this is more about like I'm just fascinated by the matchup and the stakes here, and this is going to be great. So
If Arkansas wins it, what's it look like?
I think if Arkansas wins, it is probably going to be JD Note hitting some ridiculous shots, as he always does. I think that he's someone, as we've said before, and I think we someone brought this up in the comments, and I think it was a pretty good response someone else had was I've talked about how like JD Note is just a clutch player. That goes beyond like winning shots. I'm talking like he hits so many tough shots throughout the course of a game. It seems like I'd put his tough shots over anyone else's in the league. Like you think back to that Kentucky game, he's hitting some of these shots just like over people, from I'm just like some of the shots he hits are just magnificent. And I think that they have to have a big game from him. There's no doubt about it. But also Jalen Williams is going to be huge in this one. Go back to the last game. He had 16 rebounds.
Fouls,
yeah,
I think, matter.
Well, yeah, and I think
and he doesn't get in foul trouble.
And that's the thing. It's like Tennessee, they don't have that front court presence, of a guy that's going to necessarily, I think, push.
Wait a minute. Vol fans will push back on that. I made that statement.
I'm talking offensively.
Okay.
Defensively, I agree. Offensively, you can't I don't. Like,
could you count? I know he's not a post, but does Josiah Jordan James not?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, technically, that's correct.
Yeah.
I mean, you could go that route, and yes, I would understand that. But I think for Jalen Williams, like you said, he is someone that's managed to stay out of foul trouble for the most part. And I think though that it goes back to those two for me, because remember in the last video we talked about how much balance they had against LSU. All five of those guys contributed in some way. You've got to have that on the road, because it's just different. It's different at home and versus on the road. We don't need to keep going into this, but we all understand it. So I think that's it. And I think Jalen Williams has to be on the floor, because that's where the rebounding comes in, because Tennessee's a team that, like I said, with Fulkerson, Adu is playing minutes, and I just think that, and then Jordan James, that to me, that's like, how does Tennessee win this thing? I think it's they got to keep getting what they're getting from him.
Gosh, he's been really good the last month. I'm going to look this up as we're doing it, but I mean, like the criticism we had of him, really good defender, not much of a factor offensively. It's like in the last month, and remember, he was a 5-star recruit out of high school, so it's not like this is completely out of nowhere, but he's been a completely different guy. Like Tennessee, I don't know that you'd say Tennessee has a superstar. Vescovi's been a star for sure. More just steady than anything. Chandler is a future first-round pick. Really good. I mean, they got a lot of good to great players. But Josiah Jordan James is the guy that I think everybody expected more out of. But like, I'm wondering. Okay, he had 23 against Georgia. I guess it's been up and down as I look at it, but point being, he started to flash it, and he wasn't even doing that earlier in the year, or frankly, as you go back, last year either.
He was 4 of 13 against Arkansas the first time around and fouled out in 31 minutes of play. That, I think, is a big, they need him to play well in this one, I think, and, I think Ziegler, too, is a big X factor here, because remember, we've talked about
those
Note
guards
and
lock
Davis's
you down.
Ability to be disruptive. I think that's the word I used last time, and I think they will, they will cause some frustration here. I have no doubt about it, but, and I think that's a big part of it, too. So there's a lot of ways you could see this game play out, but I think it comes down to we know who the 5 guys on the floor are going to be for both these teams when it gets in crunch time, right? And I think that's why they are as good as they are, I think, because they have defined, they know exactly who is out there. There's no more rotation questions, there's no unknowns anymore. You know who your guys are and who you're going to in these kind of scenarios. And I think that's why this matchup is fun to me, especially given what's at stake, because we know who's going to have the ball in their hands. Can we start calling Josiah Jordan James Triple J too, like
Yes.
Steak does? I'd like to start doing that. That's easier.
We
So
just made it a thing.
Triple J. Triple J needs to have a big game, but I think it's like like with what you're going to get, and to me too, it's like, can Arkansas get some, can they get some good minutes out of a Chris Likes? Can Tennessee get some big minutes out of Brandon Huntley Hatfield?
Or
Those
Adu.
are the kind of things too, or Adu, either one. I think those are also things that you have to look at in this game. So I know we went about every route you could breaking down this game, and there's a lot of different factors that could play into it, but this should be really good. And like you said, I'd be surprised if it's a 6 point game. And again, we're looking off of Ken Palm 2 days ahead of time. We don't know the line, but I'd be very surprised if that's the scenario. So,
Okay, LSU will host Alabama. That one also starts at the same time, noon Eastern. LSU on Ken Palm, a 5-point favorite. Alabama had a very disappointing home loss to A&M. Alabama's been pretty unpredictable, but more predictable at home, I guess. I mean, better at home, I guess, is a better way to put it. LSU looked awfully good in losing to Arkansas, and this is just one where, I don't know, I think, again, I don't know what LSU's record is at home, and it's a little different, right? Because LSU, without Xavier Pinson, was a different team, but I think this is going to be a tough one for Alabama and Baton Rouge.
yep, I'm picking LSU. I just, it's the same thing with Alabama. You jump on board, then all of a sudden you jump back off when they lose a game like they did against A&M. But the good thing is this is an NCAA tournament team, and so my guess is Alabama will rise to the occasion and play well here. But I just think LSU defensively, with all the turnovers for Alabama, I think that's the key thing here.
Oh, and they were awful at it against Texas A&M. Just didn't take care of the ball. And LSU is not the team you want to play. There's a few of these, but LSU, particularly at home, would be a team you do not want to play when you don't value your possessions.
First matchup, LSU turned it over 20 times themselves, but they didn't have Pinson, as you mentioned. Alabama turned it over 17 times. I don't love the setup for Alabama here. I think LSU at home, we're not going to have as much of a deep, in-depth breakdown as we did for that Arkansas-Tennessee game, but it's like, I think for like one of these games, it's just sort of, I think it's pretty straightforward. Like, I don't think there's like a need to just, you know what I mean? Like, I just think this is a game that's, to me, if they turn the ball over, they are going to get beat. And, it's that simple to me. I just don't, because LSU too, like we talked about their defensive numbers. Teams are shooting 27.7% from three against them this year. So if Alabama's going to make like this just, outstanding 3-point barrage or something, you don't think it's coming against LSU, right? You go back to the first game. I mean, they went 7 of 34 for 21%. So I think that automatically to me limits what Alabama is going to be able to do here. And so, yeah, I'm going to pick LSU. And, I look at it too here, and I'm curious about this because I thought about it. I was like, you know what, maybe there's something to this. I mean, Alabama has hit some threes on the road this year. Vanderbilt only went 8 of 28, but
and still won.
Kentucky, they hit 14. Ole Miss, they hit 14. They hit 14 against Auburn, but in some of those games they're playing from behind, right? So, I think LSU's a different beast here, different animal. The Bayou Bengal, and I think they're gonna claws out, ready for some defense. I'm picking LSU, man. I think the turnover is the big issue I have with Alabama going on the road against a team like this.
Is claws out a thing?
I have no idea. We
just made it a thing, maybe.
Maybe. As soon as you said that, my dog barked in the other room, so he's getting feisty. Maybe heard Bayou Bengal. Got a little. We'll see.
Mine's outside, and I haven't heard him barking, which makes me wonder if he's found a hole in the fence. But
yeah, well, he'll find his way back.
No, he will not.
He'll come back. Oreo's a smart guy, from what I've heard.
No, Oreo likes to make a game of everything.
Well, that's mine too. So
there are stories when he's gotten out, but those are for another show. An hour later, 1 Eastern, South Carolina goes to Auburn. Auburn on Ken Palm, a 16-point favorite. That seems a little high, given the way Carolina's played better lately, but I don't think anybody's going to bet against Auburn at home in a if you win, you're the SEC champion outright kind of situation.
Yep, like I've said before, if there's someone that will use that to motivate his guys, Bruce Pearl, I think a master of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, this is it. We said it, right? No one wants to share a regular season title. No one wants to share a championship. You want to win the championship outright. You've had the best season to this point. If you want to argue with that, that's fine. But they have the best record, and as I said before, they're 26-4. I know. Once again, we've tried to find things to look at to maybe pick apart with Auburn, but it's just when they're at home, you kind of know what to expect, right? I mean, really, let's look at this in the SEC. Let's go through this quickly. 13-point win at home, 14-point win at home, 17-point win at home, 19-point win at home. SEC Big 12 Challenge against Oklahoma, 18-point win at home, 23 against Georgia, 8 against Kentucky, but that's Kentucky, 12 against Florida, 15 against LSU. All those are double digits except for Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that to me speaks for itself. So,
do you think that place will be rocking?
I was going to say, if you have a question about that, that's not going to be any sort of hard one to answer because it will be rocking. And I think South Carolina is another team that we've said playing their best basketball. They've won 5 of 6 right now. I would not sleep on South Carolina here because I do think there's also an aspect of when you're a team that does know what's at stake, all the pressure is on Auburn right now, if you think about it, because, again, if you want that outright SEC title, it's not a matter of what anyone else does. It's a matter of what you do. And would we be surprised if it was, if you saw South Carolina come out with a little momentum and maybe Auburn starts a little sloppy, and who knows? But again, you're not picking against Auburn in this scenario by any stretch. So we'll see how the game plays out. I am kind of curious about that, I guess, but because remember they played all the way back on January 4th, and I just think that there was not a lot to take away from that. Although there is something we can take away from this. Keyshawn Bryant only played 4 minutes in that game, did not score. Jermaine Couisnard played 16 minutes, only scored 9. So neither one of those guys were, just completely non-factor.
They've been playing better lately.
And they've been playing really well. And we've said those guys are kind of the key. And someone else like Devin Carter, he played 7 minutes in that game. So it's a completely different South Carolina team than what Auburn saw in January. So that is something to keep in the back of your mind if you think there's a possibility of the upset here, if you think this is going to be close, those are the things I would point to. But remember, at the end of the day, Auburn's 26-4, and they've been just fantastic at home. So that's clearly the pick for me.
Now there's one flaw in the Carolina keeping it close logic, and I know it's a different team, but they've lost. Goodness, if I got my math right, their last 8 losses on the road have been by double digits. Now that's not the same as they've lost their last 8 on the road because they have beaten. Right. Let's see, they've beaten Ole Miss in OT. They beat Georgia by 12 away, all the way back on February the 12th. They beat Vanderbilt by 2 points in Nashville in the second game of Carolina's SEC season. But then those teams are in a different stratosphere than Auburn. Yeah.
So, like you said, if they're going to lose, the trend suggests they're going to lose by double digits. So that's something to keep in mind if you're betting on this game, which, as we've said many times, we are not professional bettors. We are just picking games based on people who cover the league. So
we're 2 guys with dogs.
Yes, and 0 bars and corn nuts.
We got to change that. Actually, we need to get them, but that's what I meant. Okay.
Here comes another one. Like this slate does not stop. Look at this next game.
Biggest game.
Incredible.
Of Mike White's career, perhaps?
Yes.
Florida hosting Kentucky, 2 Eastern.
There's a lot on the line here, I think, if you're Mike White. Although I guess you could say that one at Vanderbilt was just as big, although now it gets bigger because this is the one that I think we're in agreement now I'd have to look a little bit deeper, I guess. But I think if Florida wins this game,
I think they're on the good side of the bubble. I think they're in, is what I mean. Now that could change in
I think they're
Tampa.
close. Yeah.
I think they're
I
closer
think.
than people think.
Well, no, I maybe, but if I'm Florida, I think even if you win, I would still want to win another one just to feel good about things.
Okay, let's play the what if.
I'm just saying,
Florida
man,
would be 10-8 in the SEC. It would have wins over Auburn, Kentucky, Ohio State on a neutral floor, and for what it's worth, Mississippi State. I don't know. I look at some of the other teams that are right around them in the bubble. VCU, North Carolina, I consider a bubble team. I seem to be one of the only ones, but I look at that resume, and I cannot for my life figure out how people have got them as a 9 seed. Because to me, what they've done looks more like NIT. Rutgers is its own animal, but then BYU, okay, that's better wins than BYU's got. Now the same thing we mentioned, and I don't want to break out into bracketology because we'll do that later. You got that Texas Southern loss that, boy, you take that off and that changes a lot. But it is what it is, and that's one reason that Florida really needs to beat Kentucky.
I just think, yeah, to me, this is all going to be dependent on the SEC tournament bracket, and we'll get to that in a second. But as for this game, go back to the previous one, which was, 3 weeks ago.
Did they have Castleton in that game?
Yes. This was not one that I looked at and thought. I just, we talk about matchups. That's the one where Appleby got hurt, right? Because he only played 8 minutes in that one.
Yeah, and Appleby's been very good for them lately.
Yeah, and that's the difference, I think, when you compare the games. But I also look at this, and I just tend to think that we've talked about this before, right? Some teams just don't seem to me to match up well with other teams. I just don't love how Florida matches up with Kentucky. And I think it's just because it's not unlike anything we've said before with Kentucky, just in terms of their overall depth and not knowing at any time whether a Davion Metz is going to come in and score 15 or 20, a Keon Brooks, those kind of things that can happen. Sheboy had a huge game, 27-19 in that first meeting. Remember, 27-19 against Colin Castleton, right? Like, he's in there too. And I know Florida's at home here, but I don't love the matchup. I'm just going to be honest. Like, I think it's one of those where some teams you match up great against, and it's Kentucky. Kentucky's coming to town. What do we always say? It's the crowd's going to be great. Florida's going to be amped up. It's going to be, huge. I mean, this is the biggest game of the year, like you said. Not just for Florida, it's the biggest game of the year for Mike White, I think, because a lot could change depending on whether, let's say, they get in the tournament or they don't get in the tournament. But I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, but I don't love Florida's path to a victory here. I just think that Kentucky is one of those teams that, it's a hard matchup for anyone, right?
Well, I just have a hard time trusting Florida to win in that spot.
I don't have to say that.
And I'm higher on Florida than you are. But.
Right, you are. But yeah, that's the thing I have, and I think this has to be. But look, if you are Florida and you want to take something away from that first game, I don't think it's going to be. It's going to be 21 again because Appleby was a non-factor there. But now that he's in there, that will help offset some of the issues of trying to counter the guards for Kentucky. And of course, we're also assuming, I think at this point, Wheeler and Washington are good to go, right? Like
they played regular minutes. 2 games in a row now?
Yeah, so that's not even a discussion for me anymore. I think that if they're at full strength, we're going to pick Kentucky against the majority of the teams in the country. Let's just be honest. So I'm going to pick Kentucky because of that. I think that they are just – I just don't love the matchup, and I'm curious. Here's what I'm most curious about. If Florida wins this game, I'm honestly most curious to see how they do it, right? Like, I think that's what I'm most interested in. If Florida wins, what does that look like? And, is it because Castleton just goes off and is able to, basically outduel Sheboy? Is it because Appleby steps up and has a 30-point game? Or is it because Fleming or Jones or those guys, kind of limit what Wheeler and Washington and Grady and all those guys can do? So it's a very interesting.
Fleming's a very good defender too, by the way.
Yeah, right. but I still think it's one where, and look, he's had two of his better games of the season back to back, hasn't he? I mean, he
Probably
had
his best
27
two.
against Georgia, yeah, and then
Hit
16
the
against
three to
Vandy.
beat Vandy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's playing well. He's playing with a lot of confidence, and he's an experienced guy. Listen, Florida will be amped. Like I said, they will be ready for this matchup. I have no doubt. I fully expect this to be a very close game. It's CBS. We've seen. I feel like we've seen this setup. I have to look back at the schedule, but I'm like, I always feel like Florida and Kentucky play in Gainesville on Saturday in the final SEC Saturday. I don't know why I keep thinking that, but I feel like we've seen this before. But I think I'm going to pick Kentucky here just because I think that they are a team that at full strength, I have a hard time picking against no matter who they're playing. So,
all right, now we get into the Wednesday night.
Let's just kind of breeze through these next two.
Yeah, we got Georgia going to Missouri
we're gonna talk
and
about
Vandy going to Ole Miss.
In the next predictions video we do. Let's be honest. Like, we're going to be talking about these, basically same scenarios here.
I think they should just make a classic out of it because you've already got in the SEC tournament, you've already got Missouri and Ole Miss predetermined and Vandy, Georgia predetermined. You got Georgia playing Missouri this weekend. You got Vandy playing Ole Miss. I feel like we need like a Monday game in Nashville. Vandy, Missouri, and Ole Miss in Georgia just to play a classic of it, and in any of those raging arguments about who's the best of the four worst teams. That's what we need to do.
Or you could do a Monday game featuring our East-West All-Star picks. Which how do you like that tease right there, huh? We'll segue for what we're going to do in our video in the future. Like I said, that's coming in the next several days. We're going to do our East-West All-Star teams in the SEC. But I mean, come on, man. Like, Missouri, Georgia, I'm going to pick Missouri. I don't have a lot of analysis for you.
Missouri at home.
Missouri's at home. That's my
Georgia
analysis
anywhere
on that one.
is a problem.
I don't know. You know my thought.
Well, unless you're Alabama.
Georgia's going to get that second win. Georgia's going to get that second win.
That's true. Well, and okay, to be fair here.
This may be it.
You had that nagging idea that Georgia might upset Tennessee, and Georgia hung in there till the end. So, like, that's the thing that you wonder. And I guess Missouri might be up against this too, although Creighton's like the one guy in the league that we know is gone. But, I mean, we don't know it yet, but that's, I think, 100% of the people out there listening and both of us talking expect that to happen. The thing that you wonder about when you have nothing to play for and a coach who looks like he's a lame duck, do you just cash in and start thinking about spring break? And that wasn't the last look we had at Georgia, although I might question, a game or two before that they didn't look so hot. But I'm rambling way too much for for Georgia and Missouri.
Here's what we know. Cario Quindo's going to bring it. We know that. That's about the only guarantee I have in this game. So I'm picking Missouri. I don't have a lot of expectations for how this game's going to play out. So
Vandy to Ole Miss, 6 Eastern. Yeah. By the way, Georgia and Missouri, 3:30 Eastern. Of course, they'll play that one in Central Time.
That will
Columbia.
Be 1:30. No,
2:30
Pacific Time is what I'm trying to figure out here. Is that a 12:30 Pacific tip?
For all the West Coast viewers waiting for Georgia, Missouri.
I'm just curious. I you never know, man. So there's not enough content out there on the internet. Sometimes you got to give people game start times and all that, and that's what we do.
Pacific would be 12:30.
Yeah, so 12:30. Nice little brunch, and then watch some Georgia and Missouri basketball. How's that sound?
Yeah, that's crappy zero bars.
Vandy, Ole Miss. I'm picking Ole Miss.
Home team. They haven't played this year.
Home team effect. That's beyond that. We've said
Vandy's had a string of brutal losses. I mean, brutal isn't tough.
I think that can deflate you, and I think that's kind of maybe where they're at right now. And I just think we saw Ole Miss. I mean, they played tough against Kentucky. For a little while there, I guess against Auburn. I don't know how. I'm trying to think of that game. That was a week ago. It feels like a century ago. But yeah, I mean, this is one you would expect to be close again. To me, this feels similar to the Vandy Mississippi State game we had, right? Or it's just kind of, I think you got two teams that are just trying to sort of will themselves to a win here, and I'll go Ole Miss because we've said it. I don't think Ole Miss has played bad basketball. I think they've just, whether it's, schedule hasn't been easy, all the personnel changes and that kind of stuff. It's just, I think they'll win another one here. So I'm going to pick. I wonder about Vandy just being deflated after the way after they found ways to lose these last three. I wonder about that. So
this feels like Pippen goes for 35 and Vandy loses by 2.
Perhaps, yeah. I just think Ole Miss is probably the better pick.
All right, last one, Mississippi State. I can't read. 8:30 Eastern. A&M a 2-point favorite. State's been awful on the road. Thank you. You can get home for Georgia, Missouri, and stick around for Mississippi State and A&M.
Yep.
This one actually is interesting. The winner, I think, takes a small step towards an NCAA tournament berth. Neither would be there. And Mississippi State, frankly, may have missed its chance when it let that Auburn game get into overtime and lost it there. Yeah. A&M's playing really well. State's, I think, 1-8 on the road? So I think you know where this is going.
You know where I'm going on this. No offense sitting here for me. I'm picking A&M. I look at A&M and we've said it, man. I mean, even those games they've lost, this is the 15th time I've said this in videos, and I'm sorry for repeating myself, but they were right there with a chance in some of those games, and now they've just managed to figure out how to win some of these, and now they've won 4 or 5. I mean, realistically, right, you feel like if you're A&M, you win that game at Vanderbilt, and maybe we really are having a different discussion right now. So you feel like you let that one slip away. You're still trying to make up ground, and we'll get to it in just a second in terms of the scenarios. But I think A&M's the pick here. I think that Mississippi State on the road, we've talked about it many times now. The only team they've beaten is Missouri, and that was by 2 in a game that, quite frankly, Missouri probably should have won, based on how it played out. So, yeah, I like the way A&M's playing. They're not a team I'd want to see in the SEC tournament if I'm a Florida trying to get in, and I don't even know what that scenario looks like, but we will talk about that in a second. They're not a team I want to play right now. I don't think anyone wants to play them. And that is the point I was going to make here is, I teased this in the last video. Hasn't every team in the SEC beaten a top half team this season?
Georgia's done it. Missouri's done it.
Has Ole Miss done it? Ole Miss beat LSU. Ole Miss beat LSU.
That was Penson-less LSU, but it counts as a win. Vanderbilt beat Arkansas on the road.
A&M has beaten Arkansas, and then you go up and down the line, right? South Carolina has now beaten LSU. So you see the point I'm trying to make here is that everyone has beaten. So like the SEC tournament to me, and really when we predict these games, think about that. Even Georgia, the team with 1 win, has beaten someone that could perhaps finish in the top half of the league. It's wild, man. So I think that to me is a very wild stat, because like even you would expect your bottom tier teams maybe to just beat up on each other. Not the case, man. Some of these bottom teams have beaten some of these teams that are in the top half. So it's crazy. For this one, Texas A&M. That's the pick.
Okay.
I think they'll force turnovers and yeah.
Do you know what we've done?
Hold on. By picking what we've picked, I think we have created a scenario. There is just some astronomical
6-car pile up for 5th place. I'm not kidding you.
Is the Must Bus going around that, or is it? I think the Must Bus is on the other. They've gone around this, right? They're in another.
No, man, the Must Bus doesn't go around on anything. It just powers through, and you get out of the way.
All right, what have we got? If this goes to according to plan, which I told you earlier, I think there's a good chance we may even go 1-6 here. What if we go 1-6 with our picks?
I'm going to be really pissed off at the team that screws this up. Because like the tiebreakers. Like,
if there's one team,
I can't believe I'm even saying this.
I don't want to say who it's going to be, but you know what I'm thinking. If there's one team that's going to screw this up, I'm just kidding, Alabama fans. We love you. We're just frustrated like you are at times. So.
Yeah, okay. Here's how the standings pan out if we nail all 6 of those. Auburn wins it at 15-3. Kentucky and Tennessee tie at 14-14. Arkansas 4th at 13-5. Then you go Alabama, Florida, South Carolina, LSU, Mississippi State, A&M at 9-9, Vandy at 6-12, Ole Miss at 5-13, Missouri at 5-13, and Georgia at 1-16. Now, what we know going into the weekend,
my goodness,
is that Vanderbilt and Georgia will be playing in the 11-14 game. We know Missouri and Ole Miss will be playing in the 12-13. We just don't know which is the 12 and which is the 13. We've got Auburn as the 1, Arkansas as the 4, Tennessee wins the tiebreaker over Kentucky, gets the 2. Yeah, that's right, because Tennessee beat Auburn. Fortunately, I know a guy that had a little bit of free time before we went to the broadcast this morning and figured this out. And then Arkansas is a 4. So then here's what you've got. You have... Okay, I'll just go through the bracket, the top half of the bracket. You got 12 Missouri, 13 Ole Miss. Winner gets 5 LSU.
Okay.
Winner of that gets 4 Arkansas. Then you've got A&M and Florida playing the Thursday game. A&M the 8, Florida the 9. Winner gets 1 Auburn. So you've got A&M, Florida, Auburn coming out on one side in the quarterfinals with Missouri, Ole Miss, LSU, Arkansas coming out of the other. Jeez. Then you move to the bottom half of the bracket. Vandy and Georgia meet 6 Alabama, which Georgia, the one team to beat Alabama. Man, you know what's a shame is if this happens and we called it, we miss the all-time classic potential of Missouri and Alabama that we've been trying to make happen. The third game.
Boy.
We got South Carolina, Mississippi State, Carolina the 7, State the 10 will take on 2 Tennessee. And then, of course, Vandy, Georgia, Alabama winner gets Kentucky. What's going to happen? Well, Alabama is my pick because if anybody's going to screw something up, it's Alabama. Or what could happen is we think we've nailed it, and then State pulls a shocker at A&M. But I'll tell you this: I do not want to go through the 6-way tiebreak is different than the 5-way tiebreak and the 4-way.
Please no, don't do it. Oh,
yeah.
This is making my. This is going to be interesting. But like we said, I mean, we've probably had this in recent years. I can't remember.
I don't ever remember a 6-way tiebreak.
This is like a ridiculous possible setup we could have, and there's so many different combinations. I'm laughing as you're talking about this, and it's not because of the reason you think. Our guy Steak. In the comments of our previous video, someone is asking, and let's just go ahead and put this out there, okay? We've been asked this multiple times. People are asking who are our favorite teams in the SEC. We don't have favorite teams in the SEC.
We root for storylines.
We are covering this from a neutral standpoint. But our guy
Jim Rome said it best. He said, "What do I root for? I root for the story."
Well, story and chaos is sometimes a good thing to root for. But you know what our guy Steak is pushing. He's pushing his agenda here and pushing us as Tennessee fans. Let me just say, that's not the case. So I want to make sure that Steak's not putting any propaganda out there.
Steak wouldn't do that to us.
But he also said he enjoys Reese's Sticks versus the Zero Bar. So I'm sorry, Steak. That's a bad take right there.
No, Reese's Sticks are good.
I'm just kidding.
Do you know what you know what sucks? We're sitting here talking about candy. Do you know what I give up for Lent? Sweets. I do it every year.
Yeah. Well.
Now you got me craving a Zero Bar, which I cannot have.
We'll throw one out the window on the Must Bus, and yeah.
But I can't eat corn nuts.
We're one of these days we're gonna have a corn nuts and Zero Bars T-shirt when we get big. And everybody's gonna think back. Remember when those guys took off? Yeah, it was because of corn nuts and Zero Bars, not because of their insane thoughts on SEC basketball. But no, the SEC tiebreakers are ridiculous. I mean, save yourself from time. Listen to what Chris just said, but don't dig into it anymore because I'm telling you, it's all going to get thrown off with these games on Saturday. And so we'll wait and see what the bracket looks like.
We'll have our East-West All-Star teams, and we're going to go full-on 13-man rosters.
Oh, boy. That's fine. There's plenty of. I mean, there's enough to support that. So
there's going to be good players left out of that.
Can we pick walk-ons? Can we have a walk-on too for each team?
We could do that.
I got one in mind.
We're gonna pick our Wednesday night team.
Oh boy,
we could do that now. I bet. I don't think it's that hard.
All right, yeah, I'll do it off the top of my head. You ready?
Okay.
Scottie Pippen, Cario Quindo, Matthew Morrell, Kobe Brown, and
I think Brown, Pippen, Quindo are the top three. Morrell I'd probably put in there.
If you got to pick someone from Ole Miss, who are you going to pick?
Well, probably him. I mean, Joyner, but he missed a lot of the year.
Yeah. So then I think it's like, oh.
Boy.
And this isn't a knock on these guys.
Like if Liam Robbins had been healthy, maybe he goes on there.
Let me try to find the stat.
Maybe Jordan Wright at Vandy.
I think Jordan Wright's probably the closest. The next one.
Joyner
Pickett's had a decent season for Missouri. I don't want to leave him out. But
maybe we need to give this some more thought.
Yeah, we'll talk about this maybe in the East-West. It's sort of the wrap-up for the
Maybe we could pick a
All-Star
13-man roster of the Wednesday night, or maybe we shouldn't.
Not doing that. I'm just kidding. We could, but I think a starting five.
Bridges for Georgia's had a nice year.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking of too. He was the other one I was going to say. It probably would come
I think he's
right.
the other one.
Bridges is probably the
I
right
think I'd
pick,
rather have Bridges.
Think about that, though. Seriously, just think about that.
Two Georgia players.
We just picked our top 5 players on the 2 teams, and we're picking 2 from the one that's won 1 game. That is not good.
Well, I think if Ruffin or Joyner had been healthy, it's probably one of them.
Yes, agreed.
Is our 5th.
Yeah.
Or maybe you could just say, like, if they're healthy, who's the best guy?
But still, Georgia, if we're picking 2 players on a 1-win team.
That probably if Joyner's healthy, I'd probably go Joyner as the 5th.
Yeah. I don't know. It's an interesting exercise, but we'll have a lot of interesting exercises coming up in terms of our East-West teams. We'll break down the SEC tournament. Obviously, we'll do our picks and all that stuff next week. We've got some pretty big, exciting stuff coming for Selection Sunday, which we're still going to announce in a separate video. We'll do that next week at some point. And we'll have our reaction to the weekend's games. And it's just, hit that subscribe button because I'm telling you, if you find any more content anywhere from what we're going to give you over the next,
then let us know because we'll want to watch
month. It. We're going beyond the SEC. We're going to the NCAA tournament and all that, and we've got it all ready. So be sure to hit that subscribe button, and of course, if you want to bet on these games on Saturday, Action 24/7, hit that link in the description below. South 14 is the code. And, yes, you can bet on all these games.
And hit the subscribe button. You want to. You'll sleep better. We'll sleep better. Helps us out. Helps when we put up a video. So if you watch us a lot, in all seriousness, do that. That helps us out. But have a great weekend. We'll see you again very soon.